makes it a little easier.
Perfect. So I'll hand it over to you. I guess I'll start out, Pauline. If you could maybe just tell us a little bit about yourselves and your experience in selling online, and we can kind of go from there.
Okay. All right. So that really takes us to our second slide. Who are we? And I'm just to introduce myself. My name is Pauline Prince, and I'm a Canadian, born and raised. Been selling on Amazon, personally selling on Amazon since 2014, early 2014. I started on Amazon.com, and then a couple years later expanded to .ca, and have since expanded to Europe as well as Australia. When I started on Amazon, I actually was what I used to consider to be a trader, because I was Canadian living and working in the United States. And the company I was working for back in '99 moved me to the United States, and never intended to live there. And I ended up there for about 17 years. But in 2016, I chose the option to come back to Canada. I missed home, all my family's here. So I chose at that point to break my corporate career and to go into full-time entrepreneurship.
Good for you. Break those corporate shackles.
Yes, I'm free. It comes with its own, burdens, but I decided to exit the corporate rat race and full-time entrepreneurship. And it's when I came back to Canada that I really got a good look at Amazon Canada and realized, wow, there is so much opportunity here and nobody's really noticing. So this is, like the Wild West, the gold rush, really, if you look at it the right way and strategize it the right way, because everyone's ignoring Amazon Canada by and large, is what I found.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, because it seems like, like my experience when I started out, I started on .ca, and I always found it was too small of a market, and then products would move really slowly. So, I went to .com, and it was like heaven. It was like, wow, stuff sells. There's a way bigger market, and it sells globally. So I'm interested to learn more about your experience and why we should consider Canada, and maybe I'll take a look at it again.
For sure. And so, that's who I am. I am an Amazonian, except a third-party Amazonian, I guess you'd say. And it's been incredible. Obviously, as the years go by, sellers' experiences will shift with Amazon, because Amazon itself is shifting and changing in the different marketplaces. And so what I definitely will talk about more in today's session is the international outlook that we as sellers, I believe, have to have with Amazon moving in the direction that it's moving in and out and basically opening the world to us. So I'm very excited about what's happening now, and then what is about to come. Being in the Amazon marketplaces and participating in online selling. So I am Canadian. I'm very happy to be Canadian. I left the United States just at the right time before the last election. So I'm very happy to be back, and very happy to be talking to you guys today.
Glad to have you. We're looking forward to learning more about how to navigate that process of sourcing products from outside Canada and then selling them across the border here in Canada, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. So my colleague Brandon is also on the line.
I am. Hello, everybody. And first of all, thanks, Duncan, for putting this together. It's greatly appreciated having the opportunity to chat with your group members here about what we've got going on. So yeah, I won't bore you too much with me, but just a little bit about me. I was born in Vancouver. My father was in the military, so I've lived in various places in Canada, primarily Western Canada and in the prairie provinces, but we settled back here just as I was about to start grade 7 in the late 80s, and have been here ever since. I've been, I guess, an overarching online seller since, well, for about the last 12 to 15 years. I started selling on eBay primarily, you know, going to garage sales and flipping stuff on eBay. And then I got into a little bit of the drop shipping world, focused on eBay. And it wasn't until about early 2015, late 2014, early 2015, that I was introduced to Amazon and started doing some online arbitrage, some retail arbitrage, dabbled in a little bit of wholesale accounts, all the way up until late 2017, when I decided that I would be leaving, I was going to leave my government job that I had with the Correctional Service of Canada, a job that I've had for just under 20 years, to do this entrepreneurial lifestyle, for lack of better words, to do it full time. I knew in the few years that I did Amazon and other online selling part time, I knew that if I was able to dedicate more time at the beginning to get some things established, that it would be a much better lifestyle than working in a prison for the next 10 to 15 years. So
nice, love it.
Yeah, so that was that's a little bit of that. I also have been a member of the Canadian Forces Reserves. Next month, I'm hit my 22nd year in the reserves. I primarily now work with the Army Cadet program in the local town that I've been involved with that organization since 1988 as well. So when I was an Army Cadet myself, I do part-time motorcycle instructing. My wife and son, aged 9, we live out in the lower mainland. If you're familiar with BC, we live in near Cultus Lake, just around the south side of Cultus Lake. So we have a little hobby farm acreage there, and that keeps us busy for sure. So yeah, just a little bit about me.
You got a lot on the go there. It make me feel guilty. You're a busy guy.
It's all good. It's all how you plan your day. Yeah.
Totally. That's awesome. As long as you're having fun, that's the main thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay. So, Duncan, if it's okay, we'll go ahead and get started.
Yep. Looking forward to it. Dig right in.
Okay, awesome. All right. Definitely in the Amazon world, this question has to be answered. Why Canada? And I know that with Christine and TJ, excuse me, are the two that we did notice before we started that are on the call. You may be Canadian, but a lot of people that have looked at Canada are looking from outside of the country. So I do briefly introduce Canada. And it's good for us to be reminded as well, if we are Canadian. Canada does have very close ties with the United States. The treaties that exist and hopefully remain intact between the countries are very, very strong treaties. So there's a lot of privileges built into them that are not made available to other allied countries with the United States. We are the US's largest trading partner. We have very close cultural similarities. And we share the same physical continent. So with all that closeness, there's definitely a strong similarity between the products that Americans like and the products that Canadians like. There are differences, of course, but with the sharing media sources, the same commercials that are airing in the United States, by and large, are being aired in most of our cities here in Canada. So you put that all together, the product demand that's in the United States, you can draw strong direction from demand in the United States on Amazon.com to look at Amazon.ca. And I'll speak more to that in a couple of slides. Now, Canada, though, it has what appears to be a drawback, right? The sparse population. We're really kind of a country of big cities where most of the population is concentrated in big centers, whereas the United States tends to be a country of small towns, just littered all over the place. What we found here in Canada is there's a lot of, in the big urban centers, a lot of congestion that's happened. That does lead to the situation where people, even if they have a Walmart that's up the street or they have a Costco nearby, it's not that easy to battle through traffic to get to those places. So more and more people are looking to online sources to find the things that they love and the things that they consume, or the things that they're searching for. They're not sure that their local store has any quantity left of. Canadians, when you compare us to our American counterparts, we do have relatively high disposable income. That may be by choice, maybe it's because we just choose to use more of our income to dispose, but we do have a relatively good standard of living here. We have strong access to consumer credit on average across the country. And for reasons we won't get into, we do here in Canada have a strong tolerance for higher prices relative to what the same item could be priced for in the United States. When you look at all these things, take all these things together, the Canadian marketplace is really filled with consumers that are perfect candidates for Prime membership, Amazon Prime membership. And what that means is it leaves an excellent opportunity for third-party sellers or manufacturers or brand owners to leverage fulfillment by Amazon. What we found, however, is that that's not really happening, where the fulfillment by Amazon program is not being accessed to the degree that it could or should. So when we speak about Amazon Canada, I wanted to highlight some things that I found. These are samples from my own selling experience that I used to highlight this point. On this first pictorial slide, I've taken screenshots from the Amazon seller app. And if you don't already have that downloaded onto your smartphone or your tablet, you definitely want to do that. Now, this particular toy was something that I found at a Mattel outlet here in the suburb of Toronto. And this toy, when I looked at it, it wasn't profitable in the United States at all. This was, a great rank in the United States, but I couldn't make any money from it. You can see if you sell them on .com, 36,000 in toys, that's a pretty decent selling toy. And it wasn't the Christmas season when I sourced this. So, middle of the year, 36,000 in toys, that's not too bad. But from the numbers, $33.75 as the price, the prevailing FBA price, with the fees and my cost of purchase that's converted into US dollars here, the profit was negative. So that wasn't going to work for me. So we could stop there and say, hey, you're in, if you're doing retail arbitrage, you're in a store and you're saying, well, no, I'll leave this because it's not going to sell on .com. Well, what does it look like on Canada? So this screenshot is from the seller app. This was just a shot taken once I sent this toy into FBA in Canada. So it had just arrived. That one FBA seller at $69.99, that was me. The rank was still not attractive for Canada because 41,000 in toys is not an attractive rank in Canada. What I found in toys, 20,000 and under with an FBA seller present is what you would say is, a decent rank and lower. But I sent this in, I purchased all 5 that the Mattel outlet had left. I priced it at $69.99 just to test it. I was like, I don't know what price is gonna work. Let me just start here. And I plugged in these numbers. I said, that's a decent profit. Let's go with it. Well, I sent in my 5 And within a week of sending them in, after I took this screenshot, all of them sold at $69.99. So that tipped me off to like, okay, you know, something could be not profitable in the United States. I could like buy one or two, maybe three, depending on how I felt, and test it out. In the absence of an FBA seller on Amazon Canada, the rank is going to be bad. You're going to see crazy prices from the merchant fulfill offerings, usually by a US-based seller who is not trying to sell this in Canada. They don't want to ship to Canada. So they set a price that is outrageously bad, really high. It discourages sellers, and they will not touch the listing. So you, if you come and look at it, you see that horrible rank, high price, you can walk away. But take another look. Is there an FBA seller? What happens when an FBA seller attaches to a listing and starts making this a prime offer? There's a different response that you'll see from the Canadian marketplace. What about the issue of too much buy box competition in the US? I'm going to use this toy as an example from last Christmas, the Fingerlings. Now, this is a Wowie brand toy. They've, I'm sure for this year, they really locked this brand down quite a bit, and specific ASINs within this brand are restricted to even sellers that were able to sell it last year. But maybe October-ish last year, it was clear that this was going to be the #1 toy. In the United States, which is this screenshot, you can see that there were already, October, there was 146 sellers on this listing for the Mia Fingerling. The price was at its bottom. Like, you could buy it in Walmart at this price. So there was no profit in it at this juncture. So without even plugging in what the buy cost would be, you could see I could never buy this for $13 US. So unless I had a wholesale source for this where I was buying it for $4, there's no way that I was going to make money in the United States on this. Plus, look at all the competition. And this was October. What was going to happen by the time November and December rolled around? But the one thing that was also clear with this toy being #1, or close to it, different variations of it were #1, was that I would probably be dealing with, bottomed out pricing. Even though the price was going to increase, the price would still be lower because of the amount of competition vying for that sale. So same time period, October, I looked at the same toy on Amazon.ca. Now, I know that sales are less frequent in Canada because of the lower population. However, a #3 in any category, and this was #3 in toys, you'd be challenged to keep up with the demand as a seller of this item. So it was a great rank even in Canada, but take a look at the number of FBA offers, 10 versus 146 in the US. So, I felt, yeah, it is way better to sell this in Canada. And in October at $34.77, this was the lowest this price was going to be with so few competitors, right? This price was going to go up, and it did. So I was able to source Fingerlings. I only found one here in Canada. I had to go across the border into the US to buy some. And I ended up getting maybe about 10 of them that I was able to find in retail stores. Other people, of course, just had more access to these and, did really, really well. But by the time I was selling mine, this toy was selling in Canada for more like the lowest you'd find is about $75 Canadian. So, and still with the low rank. So as soon as these went in, they were selling. So this is another example of you may not be thinking about Canada, but hey, this is something that you have stiff competition in the US. Canada, though, you'd be making big profits. And because of the rank, it would still be selling. You'd sell through your inventory. Another situation where you might want to consider Canada. There are brands and ASINs, categories, subcategories that you're restricted in on .com. Have you checked Canada? Are you restricted there? You may not be. This is an item that I sold in the US. Great rank in home in the US. I'm just restricted, can't sell it, right? I went to a Kmart in the US that was closing, and I bought, gosh, I must have got something like 150 of these, something crazy, for like 25 cents each. It was a no-brainer, but I was restricted in the US. But in Canada, when I took the screenshot, I'm not restricted. And even though this rank in home, 344,000, that would be discouraging. But why is this rank so high? Check out down here in the competition section. FBA offers, none. In the absence of FBA offers, this rank cannot be taken as the gospel truth. Because with a marketplace like Canada, if people cannot get something in 2 days, if it's not a prime offer, they're gonna overlook it. I know I behave that way. Like, I can't get this in 2 days. I'm not waiting a week. I'm not waiting 2 weeks. Not even interested. And I'm definitely not buying merchant fulfilled from a US seller and I have to wait even longer and pay custom. No. So another example of you have access to something, or you are able to import it into Canada yourself, and send it into Amazon.ca as an FBA, then you'll see the true attraction and demand for this item in Canada. Right now, it looks like we don't want Scotch paper cutters in Canada. I'm sure that's not true, right? But the FBA offer, and we'll see the true performance of this item. What about things that sell really well in the United States, and in Canada, it's not even offered? There's no FBA offering for this item. I'm sure you've heard in this Facebook group and in others that with the aging population and the aged population, anything having to do with a population that needs products like for incontinency, anything supporting diabetic treatment, anything having to do with some of the medical issues that are faced by an aging population, whether that's compression solutions. Those are not just for sports and athletics, it's also for different issues and different medical conditions that may arise as you get older. Those are very hot areas. Those are niche areas. And if you have access to supply, to source products like that, yes, definitely sell it in the United States if it looks, the profit is there, and you're able to get it into Amazon.com. Definitely pursue .com, but don't ignore Canada. The same item. Now this item is a 3-pack of 10, so it's a bundled offer, but it's not even, there's no one offering this. What would happen if you take a couple of units that you would have been sending to the US and you send a couple to test it to .ca where there's no offer? Maybe you suddenly find people respond to it, and then you'll be the only person on this listing, you're getting all the sales. Even if the sales are not as brisk as on the US platform, still, those are sales, and you'll be able to sell at a higher profit margin. So we've discovered that there were problems, right? Why is it that Amazon.com wasn't getting the FBA inventory, wasn't getting the love that the US marketplace had experienced for FBA? Well, so many sellers were unfamiliar with Canada, especially those based in the United States, and especially those that are outside of North America. Very concerned about tax obligations as a foreign business entity, very unsure about what the true market conditions were here, terrified from the horror stories about shipping to Canada, the high expense of the import into Canada, whether it's the custom duties, taxes, or it's brokerage costs, or just the sheer shipping freight costs, and definitely the terror that you're going to send something to Amazon FBA, clear customs and not get everything done properly, and then it would get to Amazon and they'd reject the shipment. And then it would be a crapshoot to see whether you were going to get your stuff back. So there are a lot of barriers that prevent mass entry into Canada with product going to Amazon FBA. So as I alluded to before, there's really low participation of FBA sellers in Canada. If you think of the sheer size of the Amazon catalog, every ASIN that exists in the US catalog, it should essentially exist in the Canada catalog, and it probably is there. But if no one is offering on those listings, it is invisible. And so people are doing searches on Amazon.ca and they're not finding what they're looking for. It's not because it isn't in the catalog, it's because there are no offers. Then for the things that are there, a lot of listings are there because there's a merchant fulfilled seller in the United States or a drop shipper in the United States that has linked the Canada and US marketplaces, and their offer, the merchant fulfilled offer, is showing on Amazon.ca. But to prevent having to ship to Canada, they set an outrageous price and even more outrageous shipping costs to discourage a response from the Canadian consumer. So it does make a lot of those listings in Canada look pretty bad. But what we have found is we have to look a little closer. We have to do a test, especially if it's something that is just a popular brand. And we know what those are, right? Anything that you're seeing eye level on a shelf in a store like Walmart, those are popular brands, right? And if it's not really readily available on .ca, then really that kind of exposes an opportunity. It's just testing the opportunity and then actioning it. So we see a lot of stagnant listings. We see discouraging bestseller ranks, and that's because of unresponsive customers. But the opportunity we have is low or no competition in Canada, wise pricing, improving listings on .ca to make sure, they get the love, right? Maybe are there keywords on these listings? What does the product title look like? It could stand some improving maybe. What are the bullet points looking like with the description? Maybe that will help the listing. We just need to give it a little bit more love, and maybe we will see some of these popular brands see the attention in terms of demand that we can expect. Now, we're not alone. We have product research tools such as Jungle Scout, the free version, as well as the pro version. Camel works for Canada. Keepa, a very valuable Chrome extension, or any browser extension. Keepa is really great. That I do recommend, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about Keepa previously. Inventory Lab has not expanded itself to accommodate Amazon Canada. Maybe someday we'll be able to convince them to, but for now, Inventory Lab, no. but we have enough product research tools that will help us in doing analysis. So definitely make use of those. Now and here I introduce Brandon and myself in terms of what a business I launched a year ago, a prep center in Canada. And when I came back to Canada, I set up essentially a prep center, but it was just for my selling business. And then, I have people that I know that kept asking me, oh, well, can you help us with Amazon Canada? And I realized, what is missing is not the prep and fulfillment center piece of it, although there is definite need I felt in the marketplace here for that. But it was the shipment assistance, the smoothing the path assistance. And that's where our company, Canada Prep and Fulfillment, comes into play. So what we've done, whether you're Canadian or you're American or you're from anywhere in the world, we feel if you want to bring products from outside Canada into Canada to sell on Amazon.ca or to sell on any marketplace, whether that's eBay Canada or you have your own e-commerce store that sells to Canadian consumers and you need to fulfill to them, whatever your scenario may be, the intimidation factor of having to navigate getting your stuff into this country can be enough just to discourage you from bothering. So the first point of our service was to help people with that, to help people navigate through that, because it is complex, and to smooth the path so that it pretty well makes it completely makes it transparent where you're not seeing it, makes it invisible. So all the hassle of the process, invisible. Then to also minimize the cost as much as possible. So we have all the tricks of the trade, and also we have our own relationships with UPS, where we have very strong discounted freight as well as brokerage arrangements that allow you to import into Canada without eliminating the profit margin that you see in front of you by having to deal with expensive shipping or brokerage. We also allow for you to automate your international expansion into Canada if you are outside Canada, or if you are Canadian and want to bring products from outside to sell on Amazon.ca. We essentially allow you to automate that so you're not having to be hands-on in yet another effort to sell your products or the products you source on Amazon. I see that there is a question, so it may be a good question to address right now. Let me see. Oh, it's just a chat comment maybe. Oh, it was Brandon. There we go. Okay. So just to quickly overview what we as Canada Prep and Fulfillment support. We support people growing their businesses because what we experienced ourselves and what we know is true, Amazon in each of its marketplaces is siloed. So your Amazon US account, in the decisions that are made about that account, is separate from your Amazon Canada account in terms of, for example, brand approvals, category approvals, etc. So it's important that you have a strategy that goes across marketplaces and you leverage the opportunity that is unique to each of your Amazon marketplaces. I don't think anyone questions the validity of international expansion with Amazon because, the US marketplace is mature and it's very attractive. So there's still opportunity there, but it is mature, whereas all the other marketplaces are much more immature. They haven't yet attracted the volume of sellers that the US marketplace has. So we feel it's very important that you grow your business, and as part of growing your business, international expansion is key. So we suggest you import products into Canada to sell on Amazon Canada. If you have an eBay store or a Shopify store or Etsy, and you have Canadian customers buying from you, we can fulfill your orders to those Canadian customers. You can source products from Canadian suppliers to sell in Canada. I'll talk about our website a little more later, but we do offer resources to registered clients. Registration is free, and we have a seller resource menu that includes a very large database of Canadian online retailers. For those of you that really leverage online arbitrage, you'll definitely jump on that. For those of you that really are looking for manufacturers, wholesalers, we have a database of Canadian manufacturers and Canadian wholesalers. Good place to start, especially if you're also considering private label. In my experience with wholesalers here in Canada, I did not meet the resistance from Canadian wholesalers that I experienced with US wholesalers. Like, they needed your kidney in order to get a wholesale account open in the US. They were very hesitant to deal with anyone that said they were selling online, especially if you said you were selling on Amazon. That was the experience in the US. In Canada, I contact wholesalers and say, hey, I'd like to open an account. If the question does come up where I sell online, okay, there's no resistance that I've encountered. I'm not saying you won't encounter a wholesaler that is resistant or hesitant, but I have not found the same level of resistance or negativity that I have experienced with US wholesalers. So you could source from Canadian suppliers and sell in Canada, or you could source from Canadian suppliers and sell in the US. The business model that I implemented, and it just worked for me, really is kind of funny, because I would source in Canada to sell on the US marketplace and source in the US to sell on the Canadian marketplace. So I was just, buying in one country to sell in the other. And it was just interesting to me how their supply that I was finding in Canada that was in short supply in the US. And I was finding that I'd be alone on listings on Amazon.com, if you can believe that. Listings that were good at one time, supply dried up. I found supply in Canada, and all of a sudden I'm alone on a fast-selling listing, just happy as a clam. So you have to look at all possibilities. So if you find a good source, whether in whichever country you find it in, look at more than one marketplace to consider where you can sell that item, and look more closely at the listings on .ca. Is there an explanation for why this has not been selling? And do your research from there. So in terms of our services, I just wanted to highlight that we're in 2 locations in Canada. And this is pretty important. What we found is, Amazon's fulfillment centers, the biggest ones and the clusters are in the Greater Toronto area and the Greater Vancouver area. And so as it would happen, I'm located in Toronto, and Brandon is located I'm located in Toronto, and Brandon is located in the Greater Vancouver area. But what we've chosen to do is work in such a way as to centralize the administration of Canada Prep and Fulfillment, to offer the same contractual discounts no matter which location you are closest to or your supplier is closest to. We don't feel anyone is a client of a specific location because you may physically reside near Toronto, but maybe you have supply that's coming from Asia. Well, you know, and I'm going to have Brandon speak more to this, but if you're importing from China, bringing it into Canada, the Vancouver port is an excellent port of entry. If your product needs to come to central Canada, then it comes via rail after coming through the Vancouver port. That's usually the route we've been seeing. But, you know, what an important entry point. And with, as many of you know, the excellent opportunity to export from Canada into the United States with duty and tax waived below that $800 value threshold per person per day, you have a great opportunity to import into Canada from, in this case, China, for example. And, you know, Canada still has that favorable country treatment to between China and itself. We don't have a tiff going on with China yet in terms of tariffs. So even if you choose to bring products destined to the United States into Canada, you can get them easily into the United States, and also sell on .ca as well. So we are able to support whether you're exporting, importing, we do that all. So Brandon, I wanted you to go ahead and highlight some of that, you know, Pacific Rim opportunity that you've been seeing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you did touch on the big one there, China. In fact, just this week, a client of ours had their shipment that left China. It would have been about 4.5, maybe 5 weeks ago. And it did leave, or it did arrive in the Vancouver port area. And by the time it cleared through customs, it was here within a matter of hours on the day that it cleared customs. And then, you know, being so close to the U.S. border and to the just the ability to get their shipment to other FBA warehouses in Canada, we were able to get 2 shipments out, one to .ca and one to .com in a very short turnaround time. So there was not that lag of the rail travel to get it across the country as well. So I think the other example is not even China, but we had a client that's shipment arrived from New Zealand. And at the time it made sense to bring it up through the Vancouver area. So those are some recent examples, but yeah, I think you touched on it. It's just a very smooth and easy port of entry process that we found thus far, being able to utilize the jurisdiction, I guess, of the Pacific side. And I'm sure there's other suppliers that are overseas that that would make sense to utilize that area as well.
That's awesome. So you guys, you've got warehouses on both sides of the country, and you can have things like in Vancouver shipped from the port direct to your warehouses here. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Perfect. And then you guys, you're a full service prep company, so you can handle all of the repackaging as necessary, labeling, and all that stuff for people, eh?
Yes.
Beautiful.
So we do the full complement of prep and fulfillment. So, you know, going to Amazon, we of course know exactly how to accommodate Amazon's requirements for FBA. We do fulfillment, so we are able to support any merchant fulfilled for Amazon, as well as fulfillment of e-commerce orders coming from any of the other marketplaces, whether it's eBay, Shopify, etc. And, you know, as I'd said before, in terms of the importing, in both locations, what we recognize is that if you are buying from outside of Canada, then sourcing from outside of Canada, then you need means and ways to bring your product into Canada economically. So you're not wiping out any profit margin that was there by consuming it in the cost of bringing it here. So what we, in digging through all of the red tape and talking to Revenue Canada, talking to the border agents and just doing all kinds of research up front, what we've established is where for our clients, we stand in as the importer of record, which means that instead of you having a relationship with Revenue Canada for import, rather than you having to deal with those border agents and the brokerage relationships or the freight relationships and all the paperwork associated with it, we stand in for you in all that regard. That means you can directly import to one of our facilities, whether it's Vancouver or Toronto, from your source outside of Canada, or because so many people source from the United States, or they themselves are residents of the United States, we established locations in the US where we allow you to ship your products to, and we do the pickup and import. So what we found with these two different import options is that, you know, anything that you're physically taking into your ownership outside the country, so maybe you are resident in the United States or elsewhere, and you do retail arbitrage, it is better that you just have a direct import from where you are to our facility directly. Whereas if you are to use one of our US addresses as your delivery point, we found it makes more sense if you're using online arbitrage, or you have a wholesaler or a manufacturer that supplies you, or, you know, you're shipping directly from your China source or your New Zealand, wherever it may be in the world. You know, one of the opportunities with the US addresses is that and let me correct myself. The opportunity with the US addresses is that if it's a US source, they will more than likely ship to a domestic US address for free or for very, very low shipping cost. Then we have extremely competitive flat rates to do the pickup and import for you from our US addresses, because we'll be doing the pickup, clearing it through customs for you, and transporting ourselves to our Canadian facility. And we've really rock bottomed that pricing. And so with low shipping costs to get it to that US address, low or nil, plus our low rates for doing what UPS otherwise would be doing for you, it really is quite economical if it's an OA or a sourcing from a manufacturer or wholesaler. So it just takes the headache away. So this piece of things is really the big fat benefit for if you're bringing products from outside of Canada into Canada.
Good to know. I mean, that's handy, because some people importing might think they need to go ahead and get an EIN number right away. And if they're using you guys are the importer of record, so that might prevent them from needing to jump on that right off the bat.
That's right. So it frees you up from the red tape.
That's,
the red tape.
That's a huge plus. Actually, speaking of that, one of the things I had written down, it comes up once in a while, and some people say, you guys are Amazon sellers. Is it safe to use you since you're also operating a prep center? How do you address that with people that ask that question?
Yeah, and people do ask it. And I've used prep centers in the United States where I know the owner or some of the key personnel, they themselves are Amazon sellers. And what the approach that I've taken, I know Brandon has as well, is yes, we ourselves are Amazon sellers. We started off that way. And so in establishing the Prep and Fulfillment Center, for me, the most important thing for me was to remove myself from the day-to-day operation. So first of all, this is an issue of integrity, and I certainly am not the person that would monitor other people's products and their inventory to see what I could source to copy them or extract ideas from their businesses. That's not something that I would do. I don't believe that's the ethical thing to do. But besides that, to show that that's not a risk, I remove myself from the day-to-day operation, and I'm focused on the client relationships and building the experience for our clients. But I have staff that handle the day-to-day activity of the prep center, so I'm not, my hands are not on it, my eyes are not on it. So if my word isn't enough, then it's also the fact that I am not involved day-to-day in the prep center activity because I have removed myself from that. To further solidify, our approach, we are perfectly happy to sign non-disclosure agreements with any of our clients that would like one, and we have had people ask. So far, no one has followed through with it, but yeah, our approach for Canada Prep and Fulfillment is unique in that we believe in being very engaged with our clients. So that means, we feel your business's success is our success. So that means if you send something into us, we're looking at, okay, is this the same thing as on this listing? If we feel that there's a mismatch there, we're not going to just push it through. We're going to contact you and say, hey, we see there's a little bit of a discrepancy here. Are you sure you want this sent in against this listing? We're trying to safeguard our clients' accounts as well. I've trained my staff to look for that because we don't want anyone to, get flagged by Amazon, have their seller performance impacted. So we are going a step further by helping to be in business with our clients. So that means also when it comes to prepping, because our prep fee is all inclusive, it covers everything, and the materials and the boxes is all in that prep fee. We know the Amazon Fulfillment Center is a very aggressive place for products. And so I'm sure you've done removal orders and gotten some of your stuff back, and you're amazed at the condition of the item when it got back to you. Well, we understand that. So even things that are not a requirement to be polybagged, we'll polybag it. And even though it's an expense that we would not have to add, since we have, it's just a flat fee. By using more material, we're cutting into what we could be making in terms of the fee. That doesn't matter because what's more important is your product is getting to your customer in the new pristine condition you'd want it to be in to go to your customer, the Amazon customer. So that's the approach that we're taking, the care that we're taking. So, we consult with all of our clients as well. When you first register with us, we meet to talk about your business strategies, what your outlook is, what you're interested in. We provide our own recommendations and guidance, and we have material that we produce to try to help with that as well. And that's not just for your Canada, Amazon Canada business. That's Amazon US, that's Amazon Europe, that's Australia. You know, if we have our access to information about other marketplaces that are up and coming, or that are open out there that you may not, we're going to share that. And as we were talking, Duncan, last week, and I mentioned that, you know, I'd been notified that Amazon Brazil is actually accepting physical products, when up until recently it was only offering Kindle and ebook and e-music. But now it's taking physical product, but nothing has been said on that regard. And Brazil is part of the North America cluster. So it should be interesting to see once that opens up. You know, I advise anyone that will listen, be prepared to jump on Amazon Brazil. If there's no other marketplace you enter, you have to be ready for Brazil when it does open. Because that market is insane. Wonderful consumer market. And so, yeah, it's a huge opportunity, but it's things like that.
Awesome. Yeah. Worldwide, there's so many global opportunities with this. I guess in closing, one of the things I just wanted to ask was, where can people go to find out more information about you guys?
Sure. Okay. So we did talk about exporting to the United States. I know so many of you do that today. We are definitely a partner that you can leverage for that. Buying in Canada, selling on .com. We follow the same process that you're used to today. We turn around your product, your shipments quickly. We have a 1 to 3 day commitment, but most of our prep and shipment occurs within 24 hours of receipt. And we get your boxes across the border to a UPS Amazon partner carrier drop off. Did want to mention that. You know, we are prep experts. So we know what we're doing and we know what Amazon requires, and we handle your items quickly. I did want to highlight that, Duncan. So in terms of your next steps and your homework, what I would challenge everyone to do is to visit us at CanadaPrepAndFulfillment.com. We have what I have termed the Amazon Canada Basics webinar series that's available as videos. Once you've registered with us, and registration is for free, you log into your account and access a seller resources menu, and under there, videos, and you'll access the Amazon Canada Basics webinar series. It goes into much more detail about what we've covered today and has a great deal of helpful information, whether you're selling on .ca or .com. But the big homework assignment, whenever you're considering products to sell on Amazon.com, you're looking at your seller app, you're looking at the Amazon.com webpage, you know what? Toggle over to .ca and take a look at it. Look a little closer. Is there an FBA seller? If there isn't an FBA seller, and this is a great brand, a great product, it may be something you want to look at. Get started. Contact us. As I said, register for free at CanadaPrepAndFulfillment.com. And I'm going to pass it back to you, Duncan. But in terms of our Canada Basics webinar series, which I tried to consolidate, or condense as much as I could into this session, but we do cover why Canada in more detail in that series. We talk about how to complete the shipping manifest that allows for import into Canada, that allows us to stand in as the importer of record. Number 3 and number 4 videos are really very helpful in how to plan your shipment. It goes over all the costs associated with importing into Canada and the considerations with that, you know, as you're thinking about UPS or any other freight company. And number 4 is absolutely a jewel how to pack your boxes to minimize freight costs. If you're dealing with any shipping arrangement rather than besides Amazon partnered carrier, you need to know how to pack your boxes, because shipping companies do not charge for shipping the way that you think. It's not based on your actual weight. It is based on your dimensional weight. And we show you how to calculate that, and therefore how to pack your boxes to keep your costs down and to ensure that your stuff arrives where it needs to go undamaged. So wealth of information that's available out there. So visit us on CanadaPrepAndFulfillment.com, register with us, it's free. And don't forget about .ca. Keep .com going, but don't forget about .ca and start looking elsewhere. .co.uk, wonderful marketplace. What about Australia? You know, there's just so much more out there for you. Look internationally, get started, and feel free to contact us. Visit us online. Duncan, I'll pass it back to you.
That's awesome. Well, thanks very much, Pauline. That's a lot of information. And I guess you could email this webinar to me. A lot of people that were going to tune in maybe weren't able to make it. So I think if I post this to the group, we'll get a lot more people watching it on their own schedule as well. So we can definitely do that if you can send that one over. One last question I had, and it comes up quite a bit. Do you guys handle grocery items from Canada to the U.S.? Because that's I know that's a challenge for a lot of Canadians getting their FDA notice of prior approval to get stuff from Canada to the U.S. Is that something you guys are doing at this point, or not yet? Or
we haven't. We're not actually handling that at the moment, but it's something that we are working on to do, because what has happened, it just out of sheer ignorance, right? I have been bringing grocery items into the United States and not even realizing, hey, I should have had my prior approval, right? So that was just sheer luck that wasn't in any way. But since then, I've made sure that we start the effort to get that taken care of, because I've already been in contact with the FDA and all of that and gotten all of that lined up. So yeah, just it's amazing how that you could get away with something and not realize, oh no, I should have done this.
Exactly. Sometimes it's that learning curve, and you know, it's good that we've got you guys, because you guys can do that ahead of the time for us and save us some of those headaches. So, I mean, it's a huge advantage. I mean, grocery, you know, from Canada to the U.S. it can be lucrative, and it's there's other ways of going around to get the grocery product into Canada, but there's plenty of other items outside of grocery that we all sell, going both sides of the border. And you know, for me, I'd never really considered sourcing in the U.S. to sell in Canada, and I know you said you've had success with that, just because there's items that are readily available in the U.S. that aren't in stock here in Canada for whatever reason. And I know for myself, dealing with the Canada revenue or the Canada customs to clear the goods, it's a bit of a hassle. So the fact you guys handle that is a huge plus, and I imagine it's also a huge plus for attracting wholesalers to work with Canadians, since there's a solution now to get their goods easily into Canada.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. I mean, it boggles the mind just how many things that are sitting on Walmart shelves in the United States, because, you know, I tested this whole thing out to say, okay, does it really work to buy grocery items that are sitting on a Walmart shelf in my case, Buffalo, New York, and bring them into Canada to sell on .ca? Does that even work? And the resounding answer was, oh, yes, it works, and high profits. I've since found that there's more items than I realized that are in the US Walmart, but also are selling on Canada's Walmart. But on .ca, the price is way higher and people still buy it on .ca. So I love to use the example of, you know, something like Starbucks coffee. A bag of ground Starbucks coffee, you pick any flavor. For whatever reason, we don't sell in Walmart in Canada all of the different flavors that are available in the US. But I buy a bag of ground coffee for $6.99, Starbucks, great brand. in the United States, because of the fact that it's coffee and the kind of product it's not taxed in the United States. Bringing it through the border, they do apply the duty to it, but I bring it to .ca. It's a great rank, and it sells anywhere from $24.99 to $29.99 all day, every day. That shocked me, but I'm a believer now. Products like Jiffy Corn Muffin Mix, I use that one all the time. It's a very popular corn muffin mix in especially the southern United States. It sells for like 47 cents a box. And that box, single box, sells for close to $15 on Canada, Amazon Canada. The six pack,
wow.
which I source for $2.49, $2.59, depending on the sale, that sells for $36. And the rank is good, right? It's not a bad rank in Canada, but think the profit's crazy. What are those Pop-Tarts? There's certain flavors of Pop-Tarts that are just, I don't know. I thought we had them here, and maybe we do, but people just are not going to our Walmarts or our grocery stores to find them. They go to .ca. I'll buy a box of Pop-Tarts, a small box that's, $1.58 in the US, and I'm selling those for over $20. $20 for a box of Pop-Tarts. A 2-pack of red velvet Oreo cookies. Like, I can't keep those in stock. Every time I go across the border, I have to buy some. $2.98 each. So a 2-pack is about $6 US. That sells for about $25 Canadian for that 2-pack, and sells well. Great rank. So it's what I'm trying to point out to people is create a basket of goods. They don't have to all be consumable, replenishable, but it's nice if you have a good complement of those in this basket. And you'd be surprised. Just take the prejudice off and just look at all kinds of different things. You don't have to physically go to the US. Go to walmart.com, look at online and analyze it. And you can develop easily a basket of goods, of items that sell consistently. No, for Canada, you're not going to see the frequency at the Amazon.com level, but it's steady. And if you have a basket of goods that you're consistently replenishing because it's consuming, then you have enough things in that basket that's very consistent profit that you're generating every month, and it's a no-brainer to replenish it. So that's what we're trying to coach people to do. Canada can be a beautiful complement to your .com business, or could surpass your .com business, as it has done with me. And that wasn't always the case. So with higher sales with Canada, it's a higher profit margin. And that's a nice thing to look at is, higher profits and steady, and there's low competition. So yeah, there's going to be other people that eventually discover a listing, like the Oreo cookies, the red velvet Oreo cookies I talked about. Any of these items I've talked about, they're people that have come on the listings. But guess what? There's no quantity that we've been able to bring into the country to supply on .ca that has satisfied the total demand that's there. So we just keep selling and selling and selling. Maybe one of us, two of us, three of us on a listing, and we still haven't satisfied the demand because, again, the barriers to entry mean that people just aren't sending the quantity that's going to address a population of 30 million, right? So test your products, send 1, 2, 3 units of something. If it catches fire, then you have something that's in that basket of replenishable goods. You have a supply source wherever it may be, and you continue selling. But as we've tried to highlight here, Amazon Canada is a wonderful place to look and grow your business. And let's not even mention private label, right? Private label in Canada is in its infancy in terms of offerings on .ca. There are certain products that are in the United States that are saturated from a private label standpoint. Are those products saturated on .ca? No. So if you are interested in looking at private label and labeling something, that generic, attaching your own brand to it and running with it, you'd be surprised how something that like that becomes a very strong, frequent seller that it may not be in the US because of the amount of competition. So some of these consumer products, maybe the frequency is not at the US level, but a private label offering that is the right offering in isolation or with very little competition, that could be the home run that you cannot get in the US easily. So it's just worth investigating.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again, both of you guys, for taking the time. I think we'll end it there so we don't go too long and people can go through and get more information. The www.canadaprepandfulfillment.com. I've had a look at their website. There's a ton of resources on there. You guys have done a great job in providing the videos, and then, like you said, the wholesale manufacturers and the online retailers in Canada. And I think there's a lot of useful information that Canadians can go to get started with you. And it sounds like from chatting with both of you, you've tested this model and you really do a lot of the hard work for people and make the process easy. So we'll end it there for today. And I thank you guys very much for your time doing this. It was certainly very informative for me, and hopefully I'm sure for everybody else listening in on this and those that tune in later, they'll find a lot of value in what you've had to say here too. And of course, they can contact you either in the Facebook group or through your website with any further questions about setting up and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to meet with your group and to share information. And I'm hoping we can continue to provide, good resources and information to everyone.
My pleasure. Thanks again, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye now.
Okay. Bye-bye.